Now that we've talked about various connectivity methods, it's time to take a quick look at troubleshooting connectivity. There's certainly times when things aren't going to go right. Configurations are wrong, or routes get messed up, or a computer gets moved, and now it's not functioning correctly as it relates to internet connectivity. We have to be able to know what tools we have at our disposal and how to isolate and diagnose these issues, okay? And so you definitely have a lot of tools. You get the TCP/IP troubleshooting utilities that have been standard in versions of Windows for years. That is ipconfig to test the configuration. It's ping to test connectivity, traceroute, NSLOOKUP is a name resolution, netstat shows me network statistics. I'm not spending a lot of time talking about them because I'm just going to show you. Okay, but those are utilities that we've got to have in our arsenal. They don't change. They haven't changed since Windows 2000. Probably, in the vast majority of cases. So that doesn't mean they're not important. They are very useful in tracking down connectivity problems. We also have some new utilities at our disposal. So with Windows PowerShell, the version that was released with Windows 8, we've got the ability to gather IP address configuration, to view the DNS client cache, to clear the DNS client cache, get net IP interfaces and view details about them. So you've got those as well. I believe we had mentioned before, you essentially have with PowerShell and a PowerShell equivalent to every one of the TCP/IP command line utilities. Which one you use is going to be completely up to you. I mean, you don't have to use PowerShell, but it's a good thing to know about, especially for the purposes of the exam. Sometimes we've got issues with auto configuration. A client is supposed to get an IP address and they don't have one. All right, if you've got an all zeros address, that usually is indicative of an IP address conflict. If they have been manually configured, then you need to check that configuration and change it. If they were receiving an automatic configuration and they got a duplicate, then we would have to be looking at the DHCP server, or possibly we would be looking for an additional, what we would call a rogue DHCP server, a DHCP server that's not supposed to be there, and it might be giving out duplicate addresses. If you get a 169.254, that's called an automatic private IP address, APIPA. It is virtually worthless as opposed to a troubleshooting utility or troubleshooting mechanism. If you see that, you know exactly what the problem is. The problem was you were supposed to get an IP address from the DHCP server, but you didn't. Theoretically, if everybody else was using those 169.254 addresses, you could communicate with them. The problem is they won't be. Everybody else is using an address that they got from the server that's going to give them internet access, and so this particular client then lacks connectivity because they've got a 169.254 address. So you know where you need to focus. You need to actually go to the DHCP server and see what's going on. Incorrect or incomplete options. The options would be things like the default gateway, the DNS server, the domain name, the Win server, any number of other options that the DHCP server can give out in addition to a general IP address and subnet mask. If you've got incomplete options, then you probably just need to go check the server and make sure that all the options are configured. If you've got incorrect options, once again, it could be that you've got a different DHCP server out there. The clients don't distinguish from the servers. The client asks for an address and it receives an address, and it gets an offer and it just takes the first offer it gets. Doesn't matter who the DHCP server is. So this can be an issue sometimes, and if you've got that, check for the presence of a rogue DHCP server. Same thing with incorrect addresses. It's likely that you're getting addresses from somewhere else. Sometimes software on the machine can start giving out addresses. Virtualization software like VMware or VirtualBox on somebody's computer potentially, shouldn't be doing this by default, but potentially could start giving out DHCP addresses. Somebody plugs in a Wi-Fi or wireless access point, and all of a sudden it's giving out addresses, something like that. So there is that potential. Those things can potentially happen, and we want to know how to address them. All right, let's take a look now at using some of these troubleshooting utilities. So we're going to get into PowerShell. Actually, let's go to the command prompt here. Okay, so we'll start with just the basics. All right, the most basic is ipconfig. When you type in ipconfig, you get your IP address, your default or your subnet mask, and your default gateway. You'll also get IPv6 addresses if you've got those configured. Okay, this is a tunnel adapter, so 2001. That's the Teredo, which is a IPv6 transition technology that is set up here by default. Okay, so ipconfig and then ipconfig all. You know, and some don't go in and do this just because you're getting here the same information that you'd get in the settings app. You're getting the same information you could get in the network and sharing center. So you don't have to use ipconfig to validate the configuration. It's really just up to you. Okay? But ipconfig all will show you your MAC address, your physical address. It'll show you your IP address, whatnot. Okay? So you can see those. In this case, like I said, that's the Teredo tunneling adapter. ipconfig display DNS would show me the DNS cache. Okay. ipconfig flush DNS would clear it. Now the reason that we would want to do that, especially if, I think we talked about, you know, if somebody's got an entry in the cache for a server that's either wrong, you know, or something's changed about the server. Maybe the server's IP address has changed because they moved to a different subnet. You've got cached, you've got the old information cached. You need to clear out the cache to force the clients to query DNS. ipconfig register DNS will force the registration of those records. That one requires me to open it up in administrator mode. But those are the ipconfig commands. The ping command, you can ping just to check general connectivity between yourself and another system. Sometimes ping will not function correctly. Okay, let's see, KVDC1 for instance. Oh. Okay, and that's an example, but this is also an example. If I go ebay.com, all right, I take that back. eBay never responds to ping, and now all of a sudden they will. So every once in a while, you'll run into a website that won't respond. Okay, this I believe is one. Yes. So we resolve the name to the IP address, which tells me that I actually have internet connectivity, but it's timing out on the ping. And the reason that it's timing out is because ping uses ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol, which is one of the core protocols in TCP/IP, but it's an anonymous request for information. Basically, I'm just sending the remote machine an echo request, 4 of them, and saying, can you just reply to me? You know, the destination machine doesn't know me. It's not really a problem internally, but of course, some people have taken ICMP and they have abused it. They've created attacks like the ping of death. They could use ICMP flooding in order to do denial of service attacks. So some organizations, the firewalls will just block it. Right? If I'm pinging an internet host, I'm really just looking to see if I'm getting out to the internet. If I'm pinging a local host, it's to see if I can communicate on my local network. So typically we would ping a local host, we would ping the gateway, then we would ping a remote host. If you want to track the route you're taking, it's traceroute. So traceroute-d to google.com is going to show me the hops that it's going to take to get to that destination. Now traceroute uses ICMP also, so every once in a while you'll get a timeout somewhere in the middle. You know, something doesn't respond. Maybe it's not responding at all. Maybe it's just not responding in a timely fashion. But the point of traceroute is to see where the problem exists. You know, were you able to get off your local network segment? Is routing functioning correctly? Okay, so then here it times out and then it picks up a couple more hops. I did the D just because it, like I said, it goes faster. It doesn't resolve names, but we could resolve names and we'll just see Takes a little bit longer at each hop, but then it will display the names when appropriate, for me. So it shows me the steps that I'm taking and the different connections that are being made. So trace route, or trace RT as it's shortened to, is just to simply show you the path that a packet is taking from source to destination. Okay, so we see that keep going. NS lookup, I believe we had already looked at to resolve names. We'd also looked at the DNS PowerShell commands. We didn't look at netstat though. Netstat-A shows me active network connections on my system. Okay, it could show me the connection and then the foreign address, the server that I'm connected to. If we want to do this, and we want to do this just to check out what's going on behind the scenes, basically. If you want to see the executables, you can throw the -B. Actually, that one requires elevation, but I do want to show it. So let's open this up as administrator. So netstat-A-B. And that's actually going to show me, notice the executable that is responsible for this. So here's, program and the computer that I'm connected to, but then there's the executable that is that's being used. And I'm going to have quite a few to foreign addresses in its Dropbox. And so it helps you to identify, because sometimes you just look at it and go, why am I connected to these foreign connections? And then as soon as I see the executable, I go, oh, okay. You've got 6 programs running on the machine, at least, in a lot of cases, that are connected out to the cloud. I mean, so much is connected these days and communicating that you don't necessarily know what's right and what's wrong. There's actually an easier way of doing that. The easier way of doing that is to go into Resource Monitor, and in Resource Monitor over on the Network tab, it shows me the processes with network activity. It shows me the network activity itself, shows me the address, the machines that I'm connected to, shows me my TCP connections here. Okay? And if you want to isolate, and you can click on that, you can see who I'm connected to, and then you can see the number of connections. Okay? Same thing for Dropbox or VMs, whatever you wanted to look at. So it's the exact same information, it's just in a GUI format, so you might want to use that as opposed to netstat. I mean, I would know that netstat exists, but that is but there's another option that you have. Okay, here's going back in and seeing those resolving and clearing cache, and so we don't need to go back through that. There is a test net connection commandlet. The test net connection commandlet is a thorough test of the network connection. So it does the ping basically to a particular site that's set up by Microsoft. Okay, so it shows you the milliseconds in response, shows you your source address, the remote address, and what interface it used. And then if it didn't succeed, you could get more information about that. All right, so get net adapter. List out the adapters that we are utilizing, pipe format list. It's going to give you even a little bit more information, just telling you if the status is up, what the speed is, type of connection. Test net connection will allow you to, essentially try to ping the to the internet. Okay, there's one other, and that was get net. GetNet route. GetNet route is the equivalent of the route print command. It's showing you your routing table. Now there's a lot of stuff on this routing table that is just that are default entries. Really, it's these 3 right here that are the most important. My address, the broadcast address, and then my network segment. Okay. And so it just displays routes. Sometimes you can get bogus routes added in if a user's having problems communicating with remote networks or any other subnet. It might be a good idea to check the routing table, and GetNet route is a way to do that. Okay, so you have lots of different options for troubleshooting. Oh, I'd forgotten one more thing here. Let's go into the Network and Sharing Center because there's even more options. in the Network and Sharing Center, you've got this troubleshoot problems area, okay? And what it's going to do is it's going to have a different, sets of things. So if you're having a problem with a network adapter, if you're having problems with incoming connections, you're having a problem with an internet connection, you just select this. It's a diagnostic. It'll walk through, try to decipher what your problem actually is and try to fix it, okay? So let's say troubleshoot my connection to the internet. It's going to look for problems. It's going to come up and say I couldn't identify a problem because there is no problem. But so it's hard to manufacture this. But the point is simply to show you these wizards, and it's probably going to check a lot of things that you as an IT person would already have checked. So you may or may not use this. We want to know that it's there. We want to maybe direct users to be able to use this. I think that's probably more what it's it's kind of lined up for. But like I said, if you have run out of options, you can't think of the next thing to check, you're just forgetting, then this is also a place you can go in and let it do some checks. Sometimes the problem is outside the PC, and it will tell you that and give you some suggestions as to what you might do if that is the case. So I had forgotten to mention that there are those diagnostics that show up in the Network and Sharing Center, and you can utilize those to test network connectivity as well.